My name is Charlie. I'm 23 years old and I have always loved winter, especially when I was growing up with building snowmans with my family and friends, having snowball fights with friends. Overall, winter has always been my favorite season of the year, but there was only one winter that terrified me so bad that I didn't know if I would make it. And I was not the only one it happened to. But I will take you to the story. Let's go back a few years ago. It all happened 6 years ago. At the time, I was 17 years old. My local high school, which was only a small one, we were only around 60 students at the time. Our school had been planning for a ski trip with us to Alaska for a winter trip. Like, all of my friends and we were really quite excited. In fact, this was the very first ski trip that anyone from our school had ever done before. Or in fact, this was the very first ever time that any one of us from high school ever been traveling to a different state for even a school trip. And when we had told our parents about this, they were actually approving it. And since we were going to stay at this state type of hotel in Fairbanks, and I actually had been to Alaska many times. In fact, I do have some relatives that lives in Alaska. So I know a little bit about the nature up there. So even though some of my friends know about it, some haven't been told. But anyways, when we arrived to Alaska, to at least Fairbanks, all of us were so excited. I mean, the temperature was quite cold, but seeing all the snow, it was like being taken to a whole new world. It was, well, for the others, they were quite excited, but for me, it was just like normal. Like I said, I had been in Alaska many times before, so I was quite used to this. But the others could not stop talking about how beautiful the snow were, and how the mountains in the distance, and how they could even see it on the trees and all that. It was just a great time. And this was just before Christmas of 2017, just a bit mentioned. And we arrived to the hotel, and luckily though, I was assigned to a room with my best friend Simon. He was around the same age. And we were just having a great time all there. I mean, but the first time when we arrived, it was in the early afternoon, I believe around 2 p.m., and it was only getting dark, so we weren't allowed to go to any much ski tripping or anything. And to be fair, being on the plane for so many hours, most of my classmates at the time was quite tired, so we just decided to take the next day of doing some skiing. After all, we're gonna be here for a week, so if one day is missed out, which, to be honest, it was fine by me. But there was another thing about this ski trip that I was planning to. You see, there were this girl in my class named Phoebe, around the same age. I had a big crush on her since middle school, but I never had the courage to telling her how what I felt for her. The only ones that know about it was her best friend Vicky and my best friend Simon. They were also have been telling me to just go for it, but I was always so nervous. Even though me and Phoebe were good friends, we had known each other, like I said, since middle school. But every time when I wanted to talk to her about it, or at least confess my feelings, it was like I had a hard time to even get the words out. It's like those words were still there, but I couldn't get them out. I was hoping I would be able to confess my feelings for this time. Maybe having her just take a walk with her in town, or maybe just skiing together, just her and myself. But for the fact it didn't happen for the first few days, which is a bummer, but Still, regardless, we had a good time. I mean, the skiing hills were so amazing, and we had basically the almost entire hotel for ourselves. And I mean, I would say call myself professional snowboarding or skiing. I would say about average. I mean, I have been skiing since I was a kid, so that's no about that. Snowboarding, at least a couple of times throughout the time of my childhood. But I would say just about average at that. But even it happened that Simon tried to convince me to just ask Phoebe for a walk so that we can just talk. But it but it wasn't as simple as they believe it is. Just walk up to her and ask, "Hey, Phoebe, do you want to take a walk?" And if she says no, I'll be being crushed. I mean, I had known her since, well, like I said, middle school. I know that it's some people right now will say it's pathetic that I never had the courage to be telling her. But I had to have been saying it that ever since we started high school, she was beautiful. This black hair, blue eyes, it was like a complete different person. And she was approached by many different guys in our class and in our school, but she always turned them down. I wonder why she turned them down, since most of them were actually much more good looking compared to me. But according to what Vicky said, Vicky told me once that Phoebe was actually interested in someone else, but who she didn't know because she were never told about it. But anyways, we just had a great time though. Even though I did spend time with Phoebe, Vicky, or Simon, or just, but it happened a few occasions that I did talk to Phoebe just alone, either in the lobby or in the restaurant at the hotel, or even just that. But it was just one of the most few times I could have been telling her. But since there were a few other people around, and to be honest, it wasn't like the most perfect romantic spot doing it. Though, what would have been the perfect spot? But anyways, regardless, the time came when I actually had the moment to do it. But I'm a little bit ahead of me here. You see, whenever we went to the next day after we arrived, I actually start showing that I was skilled in skiing and in snowboarding. The rest of my classmates was quite stunned that I was so good at it. Even some of the other girls actually told me that I was impressed of my skills. They asked me how long I've been doing it. I told them that I have been skiing for ever since I was in elementary school, like third grade, and snowboarding since I was like in sixth grade, only for about 2 or 3 years. But I still had the skills in my bones, if you understand what I mean. But anyways, I could see every time when I looked at Phoebe when she was talking to Vicky that she looked at me and she smiled and blushing a little bit and quickly turned around. I thought maybe that she was just look at me or if she was looking at someone else. But regard from that, I'm just happy that I will be able to see her. But the time when the time when it came to talk to her, you may ask, what is it that made the most this particular winter that was the most terrifying? I'm coming to that. You see, during the next few days that we had left our ski trip, I was very much getting desperate to being able to telling Phoebe how I felt about her. So one afternoon, when me and Phoebe, Vicky and Simon were just in the lobby, we were just talking about what we wanted to do for the next few days. But after a while, Simon and Vicky left, then there was just me and Phoebe. I took the courage enough to ask her if she would be interested to just maybe take a walk in the area, maybe in the woods, before going back to the hotel. And since this was around noon, 1 p.m. time around that time, and she actually said yes. So we went to our rooms, put our gears, like jackets and all that, and we left. We went to the woods, and since that this hotel owned a lot of property around the area, and there were a lot of natural trails. And a lot of those natural trails had these markings to showing like several um, length of those tracks. Like if one goes just for only half a mile, or it may be for 2 miles, or something like that. So we decided to take the second shortest, so that will give us at least enough time to get to talk and hopefully me and able to confess my feelings. But as we left the hotel, there was only a little bit of windy outside, which wasn't much any difference. After all, it was winter, and it is quite windy otherwise in Alaska. So when we started walking to the trail, I think it was probably just after maybe half an hour when acknowledged to us that our teachers told us that we weren't allowed to leave the hotel during the rest of the evening because apparently a snowstorm or a blizzard was approaching and would be a bad one. So it was for best that we all stay in our hotels, in the hotel for the meantime. Even though that some of them, actually my classmates, later I found out from Simon that they were a little upset because someone actually was looking forward to do some more skiing before the evening. But unfortunately, it was shut down. But at the time that we didn't know about it, because me and Phoebe we were still in the woods, just walking around talking. We just talking about all of our what we thought about the trip so far, and we were just oblivious. We would just have no idea. I mean, we were so deep in our conversation, we hadn't even focused on what was happening around us. We didn't even notice that the wind had picked up speed and was snowing a lot more. And apparently, the storm or the blizzard was about halfway above us. So, and and as I looked at my watch, it said the time was around maybe 3 p.m. We have been out a little bit longer than we originally intended to. So we decided to go back. But at the time when we turned around, we didn't know that we had actually walked out of the path. Meaning, we have been walking and walking, talking so much it did conversation. We didn't notice that we have walked off the track. Meaning, we didn't know exactly how far we have walked out of the track. I mean, it could have been just for only a few minutes. It could have been less than a mile away from that. And as we were just about to turn around, we noticed that most of our tracks or footprints was gone. It turned out, as we were been walking, as we noticed that we were not on the track anymore, the wind had picked up even more speed, and it was made it a little bit harder for us to even seeing. I told Phoebe to pick up her scarf above her face so that she wouldn't freeze her heart, at least that would be protected. So she did, and I did the same. And she told me a little bit with a scared tone, "What should we do now, Charlie?" Well, I told her not to be worrying. We probably find the track soon enough before the wind get too bad. And like I said, we wasn't aware this was a blizzard. I thought maybe just the strong winds, which happens from time to time. But as it happened, we followed back the tracks as far as we could. But after that, the tracks were completely gone. And the wind had only increased a lot more. And now I could see that Phoebe was quite scared. Without knowing exactly which direction we even came from, we were completely lost in the woods. And in regard for that, the temperature had dropped to -30, -13 Fahrenheit degrees. and that's is quite a low temperature. And we didn't have any phones with us, so we couldn't just pick up our phone and just call for help. So I told Phoebe to grab my hand and we should keep walking in the same direction that we came from, or at least what we thought, or at least different direction. She did that, and after a while, the wind hadn't even stopped. In fact, it only getting stronger and stronger. I could hear that Phoebe was getting scared and was scared for a second. Like, she wanted to know if we were even getting closer to the hotel, but I tried to not to make her any worried, but it, it was somehow she could sense that I wasn't sure myself. She said, "Are we lost? What could I do? Try to lie to the girl that I like, or being true?" I told her, "It seems like it, but if we had to keep going." I looked at my watch and said it was now about maybe 3:30 p.m. It was getting dark, and this track, in this particular nature trail, didn't had any lights, and there was, even if there was a full moon, and they couldn't even see that dark it was. And so I told Phoebe we need to find shelter as soon as possible. But where, she thought. I don't know. Maybe if we can find a cabin or something, or maybe a cave or something. Even if it's what happened, it was impossible to know exactly how far we were even getting, if we were, how far we were from the hotel. It was impossible to tell if we were getting closer or even further away. If we were getting closer, we would have noticed the lights from the hotel. And around the same time, the others were still playing games and just at the hotel without knowing that we were gone. But after several hours, I would say maybe, since we had a curfew that we were supposed to be in bed around 9:30 p.m. So after Vicky and Simon, they went to our rooms, our, well, separate rooms. They believed that we were already in bed, since they hadn't even seen us much on the evening. So, and this was something from what Simon told me, that he was so tired that he didn't even pay attention if I was in bed or not. So, around the same time, me and Phoebe were so tired, we were so cold, but what could we do? We couldn't find a hotel. In fact, I do believe now that we were even getting further and further away. And out of the blue, I managed to see something in the woods. It first looked to be a house or a cabin, but the wind, or at least the snow, disturbed my view, but it turned out to be a hole, maybe a cave, or perhaps even an old bear den. So I told Phoebe that this was probably the best thing we could do as shelter. So we crawled in, and good thing it was big enough for us to sitting up right in this old hole or bear den or something. And she moved closer to me and said that she was scared. I told her not to be worried, but there was one thing that I know: you can't fall asleep in a blizzard like this. It could be dangerous, because if you do, and if no one else find you, you will get hypothermia, and you could freeze to death, which is the worst case scenario that went on my mind. After a while, I actually noticed that Phoebe was getting tired and tired for every second. I tried to keep her awake, but I realized I was tired to myself. And after a while, we fell asleep, despite I tried to keep myself awake, but it was pointless. But the next day, Simon woke up around, say, 8 in the morning. He noticed that I was in bed, and the bed hadn't even been touched, or at least been slept in. So he thought that I was outside, or at least do something, because my hat, jacket, the boots were all gone. So he looked through the window to see if I was perhaps in a skiing trip, or skiing already. Well, nothing there. And he went over to Vicky, and she said the same thing. Phoebe wasn't in the room. So they thought maybe they were in the restaurant eating breakfast already. So they went downstairs, but the restaurant wasn't even open yet. They weren't even open till like 8:15 a.m. And it was around 8 a.m. So they would have been open for the next 15 minutes. So Simon and Vicky went to the lobby to see if we were there. Nope. They even asked the front desk if they'd seen us, but they hadn't even seen it. They hadn't even seen us. They went outside for a brief moment to look around, but they saw no one. They were getting a bit worried, so they decided to go to tell the teacher, and likely though the teacher was already down back on the one that went downstairs when they told our teacher. The teacher first had mentioned that we used to be outside, but they told them that we weren't. They had been outside to look around. There were no one in the ski lines or in the skiing hills. Teacher himself was getting a bit worried himself. After all, it was the teacher's responsibility to make sure that his students were safe. After he managed to wake up this other teacher and the other students, all of them were gathered in the lobby, and they would ask one by one if when was the last time they saw me or Phoebe. And everyone said that the last time they saw us was around the day before, around afternoon. So one of the teachers walked up to the front desk and asked for to talk to the director of the hotel and informing them what was happening. They called for emergency, and soon both a helicopter and willing volunteers, firefighters, and even police and state police had been called in, and they started searching around in the property vicinity of the hotel. And even my classmates offered willing to help. The more people, the better chance of finding them, they thought. So they searched for almost perhaps a few hours in the woods. The helicopter used from better point of view, they could be perhaps seeing us from up there. But they reported that they hadn't seen, and they had returned back because they were low on fuel. So, but the others, they continued to search in the woods. Luckily though, there was not the same temperature during the day, and it was the day before. So it was a little bit warmer, but still cold enough. After a while, someone actually mentioned they saw a small cave nearby, and mentioned that they were going to just run there just to see if we could be taking shelter in there. Even though some of the others said this probably is nothing, but they have been told to look at any potential place that could be used as a shelter in a storm. And as a student just crawled in a shocking face, seeing me and Phoebe sitting next to each other, asleep. We were still alive, but we were just deep cold. The student ran out there, crawled as fast out, and ran at least a good distance and started yelling that they had found me and Phoebe still alive. Soon enough, the helicopter returned and managed to pull us with the helicopter and flew all the way to the nearest hospital in Fairbanks. It was a miracle that we had even survived, for somehow we were even lucky that we didn't even have hypothermia for some reason. I don't know how that happened, but we were put in the same room, and we were still unconscious for almost an entire day, actually. Despite that they gave us some warm blankets and all type of things that they required to warm us up. The teacher was put on blame for this. But later, when me and Phoebe did wake up, well, I told the teacher and the police after they came to ask me what happened, why we weren't in the cave in the first place, and why we didn't return back to the hotel. Well, it turned out that even though that the police was told from the teacher that they had told the students, or at least the rest, that the force or the skiing hills was off limits when the blizzard was approaching. But it turned out we had left the hotel before then, so we weren't even aware. So that was not the teacher's fault, that was our own. But like it all, the police told us next time if we do something like this, always being prepared for to find a quick shelter, and perhaps next time we wouldn't be that lucky. And the doctor said that we were so lucky. Uh, well, in a way, we survived without having any hypothermia, but we were suffering from a mild form of ammonia, which to be mean, saying it was probably the best that I could have the being hypothermia. And Phoebe didn't blame me for this because she knows that I didn't do this for on purpose. Because, like I said, I wasn't aware there was a blizzard that was approaching. And while we were in this hospital bed together, we laughed about this. This will be a remarkable memory long after that's been happened. I laughed and said, yeah. And especially when I was spending time with the girl that I have a crush on. She asked me what I meant, and I realized I slept. And I then come clean and confessed that I had been having a crush on Phoebe for a long time. And she told me the same thing. She had not had a crush on me during the last year of middle school. I was like, what? And that was also another reason I was the one that she had a crush on the whole time. And I was the one that actually makes sense. And I mean, since she had been asked by multiple guys in the school, and that she had only told them that she was have someone else on her mind, and it was me. I was happy about it. Even when we returned home, I was scolded by my parents about this. But at least they were happy that I was safe. And Phoebe's parents, they did scold me. They told me that they were proud that I kept their daughter safe, regardless. And what happened after all this? Well, me and Phoebe actually started dating afterwards, and to be saying, we're still together. In fact, I even proposed to her during the summer 2022, and she was right. This memory of us being trapped, well, terrified in this being middle of the blizzard, is a memory that's still stuck in our minds, and we are planning to telling this to our future daughter, which currently we even had a 1-year-old daughter, but we are planning to telling her when she's a little bit older. But I don't tell you, if I had even been there, if I had even suggested this, I don't know if any of these outcomes that would have even happened if I would have been brave enough to even to tell Phoebe, or if she confessed to me. But regardless, I'm just happy all this happened. Well, mine has been trapped in the blizzard, but anyways, still happy. Thanks for listening.